And Hypno, well, our Hypno intro, take care, Delta. See you in a bit. As Delta leaves us, he is known for one thing, and Darek, we're going to get to see it early.
Yes, that's right. This is, well, we know Hypno from the Hearthstone Global Games, where he is, as you can see from the flag, on the Swiss team there. And he persuaded his fellow teammates, even though they didn't really have faith in it at first, to let them bring even Paladin to the tournament. And they did quite well with it. I think the couple of times we saw it, it won, well, we might have only seen it once, but basically it did pretty well in the Hearthstone Global Games. And it's an interesting deck to bring, because I feel like its matchups against some of the mid-rangey control-ish decks, like Druid and even Warlock in particular, which are highly represented, can be pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what everybody has got. Like you say, highly represented. All we've seen is even, like, we've seen very little Zoo.
That's true.
Apart from Mr. Saiyan.
I feel like we've just managed to dodge it. Maybe it's going in the lower win rate players.
Sure.
But it is fairly highly represented, so I wonder where it's gone from on stream.
And as you can see, Hoy just temporarily had to remove his headset, so we won't talk about things just for a moment. Yeah, back on now.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, and it's pretty good because it has all this value with like Valinir and stuff going on in there, as well as so much nonsense in the deck. It's so hard to get a feel for exactly where the value comes from, but basically it's a load of value.
Yeah, it's a very interesting list, because this is obviously, this feels to me is what even Paladin wanted to be back when it was good, because if you remember, when there was Call to Arms that made it really a tier 1 deck, you couldn't really afford to place Spike Ridge Steed, as we see there, or Tyrion, because there was so much silence in the meta.
Yeah.
Because Q-Block was the #1 deck at the time before the nerfs hit, so you had to play double Spellbreaker in pretty much every aggro deck.
And you had to be quick.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had Call to Arms, so Call to Arms got nerfed and the deck died, but suddenly, I mean, Hypno in particular has realised, actually, you don't need to be that quick anymore. You can just sort of chug along quite happily, doing your thing, making a load of value, and try and get the advantage over control that way.
Yeah, and they just don't have the answer to your big death rattles like Spike Ridge Steed and Tyrion, which they really, really want to find an answer for.
What now?
Sound the Bells is a one-of in this deck as well. This card, I think, a lot of people were captured by when it first got released. It never really took off as a card, but just another value card.
I love that card. It's a personal favourite of mine. I made like this weird buff Paladin on the first day of Witchwood and did fairly well with it. Granted, it's because everyone was trying to figure out what Shudderwock was on the first day,
sure.
And no one knew what on earth to do with it.
So you won like 6 games while Toast was making coffee.
Exactly, yeah.
Just waiting for his 120 hours Shudderwock to go off.
But as we can clearly see in this first game, it's going to set the tone, I think, for Hypno here, where he's got off to a board lead. You know, he's pretty definitively ahead on board, but not by much. He's not going to be overcommitting anything too heavily in this game. It's going to be an awful lot of hero powers being pressed, trying to keep up a consistent, small amount of pressure. Nothing that's overcommitting, but not letting them his opponent get too much armor in the meanwhile.
This feels like something from 2016 where Paladin's just going to press the hero power every turn, and so's Warrior, and then eventually the Warrior has to clear the board, but it's a board of 1/1s because he doesn't want to get Tarimmed or Spike Ridged, and repeat for a long time, whilst NikolajHoej's got to be very careful with his removal, because we talk about it a lot, but outside of Super Collider, Warrior doesn't have that much removal these days, because you don't really want to Reckless Flurry away your 27 armor a lot of the time either.
It's just all overkill. They've got the hard target removal, like Shield Slam and sometimes Big Game Hunter. They've got the AoE board clears like Reckless Flurry and Brawl. But for just a couple of small minions, one medium-sized minion, there's nothing they really have in the middle. Unless they can get Super Collider to work well. So if you can play around Super Collider, as we see here, Hypno doing a pretty good job of by having these Silverhand recruits in the middle, then it's kind of difficult for Hoej to remove this.
Hypno is going to have the problem as this progresses as to how to get through even a 3/6 taunt over and over again. The taunts are just irritating. He has 2 equalities. He has the Spike Ridge. He has Tyrion, but he doesn't have a huge number of ways to hack through taunts without losing a lot of 1/1s.
That's true. Which is probably why he went for this play instead of Corpse Taker on 4. I'm not even like I should point out now, Hypno is clearly very proficient with this deck.
Yeah, we're going to say whatever he does is right.
Exactly.
That's just going to be how this cast goes, I think.
Yeah, very few, like, you know, I have not seen much even Paladin at all while on ladder or in tournament play, so I defer to him here that he thinks just pressing that hero power as much as he can is the way to maximize his value and efficiency to fight back against this odd warrior. I think I would have given very strong consideration to just throwing down the Corpse Taker straight away, though.
So I feel that he's trying to maintain a hand size where he can leave some space to build it up if he gets the good stuff, but also, you know, hero power enough that he doesn't just throw value away.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that Corpse Take on 5 is fine, but Corpse Take on 4 isn't.
Yeah, well, I guess
you get the hero power weaved in, so...
And the other thing is that it doesn't even have Wind Fury, does it? Like, there's nothing with
it's just
Wind Fury in the deck.
It's more of a defensive unit.
Yeah. And because of that, like, if it had Wind Fury, I'd be more inclined to throw it down because it's much more important that the warrior remove it. He wouldn't have been playing into mind control tech as we saw he did in the end there. But this way, he baited out the MCT on a pretty underwhelming board, got down this Corpse Taker as just a 3-3 that can start hitting his opponent. It's that thing I was talking about of just a decent-sized board that erodes the armor total.
And that is something that playing it on turn 5 did do, is it played around the Super Collider really tastily.
I think it would have been able to do that
Actually
anyway.
It would, yeah, because you're going into
1-1.
turn 5, yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. But again, it is defensive. It's not really going to threaten. It's just going to keep the armor under control.
This turn, however, I do very much like a deviation from the hero powering line of just getting this Spike Ridge Steed down, because now Hypno can just say, okay, I've got a really good amount of stuff on board. I can just chill with the development for a moment. If NikolajHoej doesn't remove this board, then Hypno is obviously ecstatic because he gets to smack his opponent for 8 every single turn.
Yeah.
And if he does remove the board, he's got Tyrion to follow up. He's got plenty of other fantastic draws in his deck as well.
And I think one of the keys when you're playing against Odd Warrior in general is if you can get a chunk of damage on a turn, take it while it's there. You know, it's obvious with things like Savage Draw or whatever, even if it's not lethal, you just go in a lot of the time. But it applies to any deck. If you can just suddenly chip 10 damage off their face, suddenly they're not on the defensive as such, but now they've really got to worry about their hero power, and that takes mana away from them that they might urgently need.
And something kind of subtle, but I think quite indicative of NikolajHoej as a player just happened there, is that when he top-decked the Owl, he gave a pretty obvious facial sign of relief.
Yes.
Like, he went, oh, thank goodness I got that. You very rarely see that from the top players in terms of they get a good draw and they let their opponent know that they've got a good draw. And that does show, I think, his somewhat inexperience in tournament play, where while his Hearthstone knowledge may be very good because he's played a lot of ladder, had a good amount of finishes at the end of the season, his tournament play, maybe he hasn't learned the skills that one needs to really be maximizing your chances of winning a tournament. Yeah,
I mean, I do go on about it quite a lot, but you talk to even the top players. I was talking to a really strong player yesterday saying, what was it like when you first made top 16? And the answer I got from the player was like, no one ever wins their first top 16. Like, and this is a well-known player. I'm not going to say who it was because I said it'd be off the record, but yeah, somebody did say that. And it's like, it's just amazing to me how strong players did get nervous back in the day. Like even Sottle got nervous when he got to a top 4.
That sounds like in the Matrix, like no one makes the first jump. No one gets there the first time.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. I mean, obviously you can win if you settle down very quickly. Maybe you win your top 16 game and settle. But
if you're the one.
If you I'm done already, and it's 5 minutes into the first broadcast of the day. Should point out just while we're sort of watching this unfold that the top 8 gets cut to, and already we've got so many players who you will know up there. Hunterace not here. And it's a big deal because Fino and Saiyan are both 4-0.
Yeah.
But players like Paul 8 and Impy and Hypno, Davido are all been doing really well this year, and they're all 4-0. And then the 3-1 bracket, if you like them, if your favourite player is at Oslo, they're 3-1.
Yeah.
I could list them. It's just your Tylers and the Cases of this world are all 3-1.
All in with a good shot. And I hope to see them do well. Let's hear for NikolajHoej. Still needing to find a way to use... He wants to use a piece of removal to deal with this board, because 5 damage on board, it's enough to be annoying. It's enough to want to clear it, but it's not enough to warrant a piece of removal. And that is what Hypno has so perfectly been able to find that sweet spot throughout this whole game. Every single turn, it's been baiting out a little bit of something. It's just annoying enough to get Hoej down to the half health point.
I mean, the other big deal here for NikolajHoej is you get 15 minutes notice. You get the bracket, you get 15 minutes, and in that 15 minutes you're learning. You normally go, okay, I'll memorize my opponent's tech cards and roughly what they're doing. He's going to rope a lot in this because he's going to be working out the matchup. It's even a good pro player hasn't played against even Paladin many times with Odd Warrior.
Yeah,
he's going to be sitting there going, okay, so I know I'm doing this one turn, but how on earth do I win this game? What am I supposed to be attacking face? Am I supposed to be defending? Am I supposed to be fatiguing him? And he's going to spend every turn trying to improve his current knowledge of this very unusual matchup.
We see here from Hypno the not necessarily quite so obvious decision to go for the Tyrion right now instead of developing the Spike Ridge Steed for a little bit more of immediate damage. This is clearly very resilient at the moment against pretty much every form of board clear, especially because even if something like a Brawl does come down, something will be surviving, and then the Ashbringer can start smacking face again. I feel like it's been too long since we've seen some good Ashbringer action.
I mean, yeah, the meme always was that Tyrion is the best card in Hearthstone, like pound for pound.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always necessarily fit into a deck because it's a fairly synergyless card. You just plop a load of value on the board, then it dies, and you get a load more value.
But just look at it now. Like, you can see why this was the the Dr. 8 in the Dr. 678 curve of mysterious challenger.
You've just dealt with Dr. Boom, and suddenly Tyrion comes out. You're like, this is just not fair. And they always had it.
Especially as I was going to say the IMB Cal was baited out earlier. It wasn't really. Hypno would much rather, I think, have had the Spike Ridge Steed stick around, but it's dealt with, at least. He doesn't need to worry about that IMB Cal.
Yeah.
He does, however, need to worry about the Tinkmaster Overspark, which is in NikolajHoej's deck list in this Odd Warrior. So that's probably one of the big reasons for why Hypno is going for Tyrion while he has other minions on board to try and protect his Tyrion from being squirrelized.
Yeah, it was interesting talking to Penny earlier about their Tinkmaster. Like, did you copy Zorkthar? Because did you guys all communicate? She says, no, the Danish community came together and put it in for one matchup. I think it was a priest matchup. I may have misunderstood that.
Interesting.
But Zorkthar put it in there for Taunt Druid. But what happened is when they tested this individually for the thing, they both realised independently, hang on, this is just good against basically every deck in the meta that we're expecting to see.
Interesting.
But they both reached it from trying it as a one-card tech card against one deck and independently realised, actually, this is just good against, like, Mountain Giant or whatever, which nobody put it in there for Mountain Giant. They just suddenly realised, actually, it's just really good against Mountain Giant. So, yeah, the Tinkmasters have just been a revelation of this tournament. I imagine that it will just be a staple after this tournament.
It could be. But right now, Hypno taking the very clear shift away from value and transitioning into I'm going to kill you as quick as I possibly can game plan. We can clearly see there is immediate response from NikolajHoej, just Dynamatic on this turn, will clear off everything with a hero power, keeps him alive. But then there's a lot of answers that Hypno can start to go for. We could see a big Spike Ridge Steed minion. We could just see wait, does he have Avenging Wrath? Yeah, one copy of Avenging Wrath in the deck, which could just deliver lethal straight away. So this is starting to look pretty scary for NikolajHoej.
And what's surprising to me about this is I thoroughly expected the Paladin had a good chance for all the value it has stacked in the deck. But I didn't expect it to be just like, I curve, you die. It's not quite over, and Warrior can stabilise because that's what it does.
Yeah.
But he's just played cards to a large degree. Apart from the Corpse Takeaway, he missed one turn. And there'll be a reason for that we probably overlooked. He's just played cards.
He has just played cards, but he's also been smart about it. I think like the way he didn't go for Corpse Taker on 3 was kind of actually just to bait out an MCT, which it worked well. He just omitted a hero power on the last turn, and Hoej top decked and played the mind control tech.
Plays around
without
Brawl
stealing.
a little bit as well.
Plays
When you're in a
Brawl,
winning position, play around that Brawl.
Yeah, and because if there was a board clear, it would clear off the 1/1 anyway. That's not going to make any
would
difference.
Kill it anyway. Everything would kill it anyway. But I'm just like looking through the deck list. You're like, how does this work? Well, it seems to just work by playing good cards. Sometimes that is the solution. Ike knows this. Always interesting playing against a deck specialist when it's somebody who plays either an incredibly high level of a deck or a bit of a weird deck, because you can learn what you're supposed to do from what they're doing. You trust them to be making the right moves.
That's fair.
So from where Hoej sat, he can sit there. From where NikolajHoej sat, he can sit there and go, okay, Hypno's trying to do this.
Yeah.
Therefore, I must need to be. He can work out what he's supposed to do by how his opponent is playing. Although, as I say, Nothing particularly ridiculous has happened in this. It's just been, I hit you, you might die. Constantly making sure you've got minions about for all these amazing buffs. And like you said a minute ago, the owl's gone, so now look at this.
I like this a lot from Hypno. I was thinking, you know, he can just hold off here, but if he doesn't go for Spike Ridge Steed now, I don't think he's ever going to have an opportunity where Spike Ridge Steed attacks as soon as you play it. It's always going to be on a minion that can't attack because it was just played that turn. So get it down now, give yourself resilience, against Brawl, because if they Brawl and your Stegodon lives, you can just throw down Blessing of Kings on it and win the game.
The horrible moment in every Control player's life where they feel, do I have to Brawl this? is upon NikolajHoej right now.
I don't see what else he can do. Double attack in, Hero Power Reckless Flurry does nothing. If you start with the weapon, you just die. It's going to have to be a Brawl and pray that it goes his way. I think we can see, though, even if it does go his way, it's pretty much going to be lights out.
And it doesn't. So that saves everybody a lot of hassle and pain and agony.
Yeah, he's just going to end this one. And Hypno, through a very nicely, patiently played game of Hearthstone, I feel. It was taking a good amount of value whilst also getting a good amount of aggression. Just doing what even Paladin did so well back in the day, where it was not an aggro deck, but played fairly aggressively. It constantly had a good amount of...
I agree with you on the talk, and so does Nikolaj, but making me wonder if this deck is actually just going to steamroll through this tournament the more I look at it.
It could. I doubt that this is a fantastic matchup for NikolajHoej because, I mean, I said that he has, you know, Spellstones and the Naturalizers, but I'm not sure if that's going to be enough against the likes of Spike Ridge Steed and Tyrion. There is no Skulking Geist available to Hypno, which makes some amount of sense. I think it's probably a bit too quick of a deck to be running Skulking Geist.
But he does have a Mossy Horror, and there it is.
He does have a Mossy
So now
Horror.
he can go as wide as he likes.
This is looking decent for Hypno now. I'm liking what I'm seeing.
I really like this. The more I look at it, the more I like this bring to this tournament because everybody and their dog is banning Quest Rogue. Even Firebat's dog has banned Quest Rogue at this point. And so you need another control killer. And if this is working how it seems to be, how we're envisaging it. Ooh. Oh, he doesn't care about no twig.
Yeah, that is a very surprising turn to Ooze. I mean, it's aggressive.
Look at his
gets
hand,
the damage going. And like you said, his hand is clearly leaning towards the aggressive style of play.
I feel he kept the Ooze to deal with twig, then got a very curvy hand and decided, you know what? The twig doesn't work if they're dead.
And to be fair, it's not Malagos Druid. Twig is a lot more effective in terms of board control in Malagos Druid because you go Mally, swipe, swipe, or something like that with the twig break in the middle, obviously. Against Togwaggle, it's still incredibly good on the turn they break it. A 20-mana turn is not to be sniffed at, but I feel like it's not quite so game-breakingly good as it is as in the Malagos Druid. Even then, I'm not 100% convinced by this play from
It does interfere with their wild growth turn. You either hit them for more damage.
They're always wild growth in there.
So yeah, that's what I mean. It interferes with it, so you punish them for it. Yeah,
okay.
You get an extra 3 damage in by that happening. Yeah, they're not going to not do it.
Yeah.
To save 3. So I wonder if that is part of it. It's like I'll take this opportunity for cheeky 3. Maybe in your assessment, you're saying how you feel it would go the Tog way a lot of the time. Maybe he knows that he needs to get those extra 3s in here and there because it probably gets pretty close before the Druid starts getting their armor sorted and their board established.
Fair enough.
And again, maybe drawing the Mossy Horror changed his mind on how he wants to play the game. Maybe he's like, okay, make board. They can't kill a board. Okay, there is swipe. There are naturalizers, etc. But basically, if I can make a board on Mossy and just kill them, that's a thing I can do.
So this is a tough turn here from Hoy where, well, first of all, he needs to wonder, what is that secret? How's that going to mess me up? And second of all, how does Twig work if he plays it here? A turn 3 Twig, if attacked every turn, equals a break on turn 7.
That seems nice.
So he could then go Twig on turn 4, and then on turn 7, Malfurion Ultimate Infestation on the same turn. That sounds good, doesn't it?
If you're trying to stabilize against a mediumly aggressive deck, seems like 17 mana with the 2 best cards in your deck seems a good way to try and start that.
So it looks to me like Hoy is trying to set up a play against Corpse Taker here by going with the attack on the Well, it's also play against this, yeah. So by attacking into the Hydrologist, it means if Corpse Taker came down, he could attack into the Corpse Taker with the weapon, swipe the Corpse Taker for a board clear, ignoring the secret, which might give a redemption. And if it is the Hydrologist, he still has a board clear here by attacking in again and going with the swipe. That is, however, a lot of damage.
Yeah, you don't mind an 8 damage 4 mana spell in your deck if you're Hypno. That's how it's going to work out. And you can see how it's affected Hoy. He sort of nodded, not sarcastically, but like sort of the nod that we all do when your opponent does that thing you really hope they're not going to do.
Yeah.
But now he's full on head in hands. Absolutely not like this mode.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course he got that. It's always me, isn't it? It always happens to me.
This never happens to me because nobody plays even Paladin.
Fair enough.
All that's going through his mind is, why do I get the even Paladin guy?
And it is a little bit unfortunate that Blessing of Kings came down because Kings, in the old school, even Paladin at least, was fantastic against Druid, one of the cards you were looking for most heavily. And it's only a one-of in Hypno's list, somewhat interestingly, as I would definitely not have even considered cutting one from the old even Paladin, but I guess he's thinking, like you said, a little bit slower of a deck now.
There are people in the casting world who would hate this deck. I'm just counting the one-ofs now, and I think
there's a lot of one-offs.
There are something like 15 one-ofs in it.
Wow.
There's 14 one-ofs in this deck, and there's not that many legends. Actually, there's quite a few legendaries, but there's, yeah, one Chain Gang.
And usually...
one Chill Blade Champion. It's just like numbers that just look like you couldn't afford to dust all the cards.
Well, usually, decks with a lot of one-offs tend to be homebrew decks, I find, because Hypno... Like I've been talking about him as the master of this deck, and at the moment I think he is, he's one of the very few players piloting this deck. I still feel like this smells like a deck that hasn't had the entire community scrutinizing over it and calling it trash for months, like every other tier 1 deck has.
Sure, that's fair. And it usually goes two ways when you do that as your own deck. You start off with a lot of one-offs to see what works, and instantly just chuck out the rubbish after like 10 games. It's like, this card just doesn't do what I thought it did. But then he's played this enough that isn't that mode anymore. So what happens? You go to all 2-ofs, and then slowly but surely you realise, actually, I know why I'm putting these in my deck. So this could be reasonably tuned, but it does look weird.
So now Hypno with the chance to go with either triple sound the bells for, what is that, 4/7?
Or you can try and bait out the Plague. It's not much of a bait, it's Corpse Taker Dude.
Does that win you the game, though? Because you want to set up lethal next turn pretty much no matter what is the game plan. So if you go triple sound the bells, on turn 6, maybe they Plague anyway, just because that's their only chance. That would not win you the game, though, because you attack face for 4 Mossy, 4 again, which doesn't win you the game. And then we can see NikolajHoej. I mean, Hypno expects that once the twig is broken, he will not be getting lethal. Things start to go very wrong then.
Yes. But he's so close to pushing it through. Yeah, this is the anti-plague play, even though obviously Twig will go. Actually, Twig can't go.
It's kind of the anti-plague play. It's just Mossy destroys your own guys as well. Like it's.
But we're talking about a plague that isn't a plague. So what does Hoy do? He can't face tank 3.
He can't face tank the 3, so he can't get the Twig going.
So this is why he's played this way, because now if Hoy hasn't got plague, if he has got it, it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
But even then, he doesn't really want to face tank 3.
So the line has to be... Well, wait, how much damage is actually on board? So it's lethal no matter what on the following turn. I think we can clearly see, even with a hero power pass, NikolajHoej is just dead to this onslaught from Hypno.
Yeah, we're talking about the thing that he should have had in his hand. He was a proper druid.
Well, here he just has to... Like, his hand is so heavy. It's so nearly worked out for him. But he has to just either play Tyrant or hero power pass it, depending on how lucky he's feeling. And we can clearly see with a True Silver and a Sound the Bells, I think that's just going to be lights out.
Yeah, this slow deck, as we sort of refer to it as, turn 7 kill.
That's what Blessing of Kings does.
Yeah.
This is like back in the day, up against the Q blocks. You looked for Blessing of Kings almost more heavily than you did with for Call to Arms, just because it was so incredibly powerful against these slow control-ish decks.
Yeah, because they don't have any removal. I mean, naturalising this, but there was nothing in the old control lock that could deal with it till turn 4 or 5.
Yeah. And Hoy here saying, I have to... Okay, well, he's attacking with the Twig. Like, he has to get so lucky here to win the game just to try and get a Malfurion into UI turn. We can see, however, as can Hoy, that Hypno's going to be going up 2-0 with his even Paladin. And this just has to be feeling absolutely amazing for him. When you're up 2-0 in last hero standing, it feels very good normally. But when it's with your deck that no one else really has the faith in and you're doing remarkably well with, that's just got to feel amazing.
Yeah, Purple did it with Malygos something back in one of the other DreamHacks.
I mean, I don't want to go too all out here because there is the opportunity for the even Warlock to just go completely nuts right at the start with a giant Drake, a giant, something like that, just to throw something big on the board and the Paladin can't contest.
And my first instinct was that Black Knight looks good, but I don't know. And then Hoy started clicking away, got to the Black Knight and did exactly what my head's doing, which is, do I keep this?
Is that good?
Killing those taunts good enough?
It kills a lot of stuff.
But it does it a long way into the game.
Paladin is just taunt central. Like, you already have the Twilight Drake, which is your turn 4 play.
Okay.
Or maybe even your turn 3 play. Obviously, he's on the coin. If he can find himself a Hellfire, something to clear off an early board, this is looking pretty okay.
That does look like a hand
NikolajHoej.
that is going to at least take this into the late game, of which we keep speaking, of which never happens.
Yeah. This is like two eras of Hearthstone clashing, isn't it? Because you remember the even Paladin, which was the big thing after Witchwood, and then the nerf hit to both Q Block and even Paladin, and then even Paladin started to disappear, and even Warlock took over from Q Block mostly.
Yeah, it's
quite interesting.
Time machine.
Yeah.
And worth noting, we did mention it at the time, but we didn't go back to it. Last game, that Swamp Ooze, he killed his opponent before the twig got procced.
I think it might have actually worked out better for him if he'd gone for the other way, Hydrologist first, because it was just spellstoned right away, and then a 3-2 would have stuck on board instead of a 2-2.
But playing a minion at all, not necessarily the ordering, but just deciding I'm not going to save this, I'm just going to put it down as a thing.
And maybe the Hydrologist wouldn't have baited out the Spellstone. NikolajHoej would have said that's not threatening enough. So
it's hard to know, but the whole point of saving your Swamp Ooze and using it as a 3-2, just as a minion, even against a deck which is notorious for wanting the extra mana, was an interesting thing.
And this is a weird choice here, because Redemption is... Obviously, if you want a board to stick, feels like a good card, but Defile will just kill basically whatever gets redeemed anyway. Auto Defense Matrix... What is going to be attacking into your minions in early turns? It's likely just to be giants going to your face after they clear the board.
I like 8-1 giants.
I like Repentance as well. I think,
it seems fun.
Despite the fact that he really wants to stick a board against the likes of Hellfire and Defile, it just is going to clear his board. He has to just accept that, okay, in the early game, there's going to be some kind of board clear, so let's give myself real game, real denial against the Mountain Giant.
Interesting how this game can make you look like a genius or an idiot. This Black Knight keep looks like absolute genius as the hand has developed. He's drawn all the removal. He's going to have one big minion to deal with. He's going to blow it up with a Black Knight. And whereas if he draws a different part of his deck, it just looks absolutely awful.
I thought you were going to say it looks like complete garbage because Hypno hasn't got any taunts.
No, yeah, but the only way he's going to stick a minion against this is if he does get one.
Fair enough.
So it's interesting how that works out sometimes in the game. That's why you can't judge things on small sample sizes in Hearthstone.
And now for Hypno, the really interesting thing is that I feel like, obviously, no matter what secret had been chosen and played there, it might have just stopped Hoy from going for the Giant on 3 anyway. So maybe it might have been better to go for one of the other ones thinking about it, because I agree, Repentance is the best one. Repentance does the best thing
but
here.
he thinks it's Repentance anyway.
So if you choose one of the other ones, it's like 2 secrets for 1 if your opponent doesn't call your bluff. Can NikolajHoej see that it is, in fact, a Repentance? Does he think his opponent's just bluffing? He goes for it here, and he is going to be punished with the Repentance. An 8-1 Giant looks a little bit less threatening.
Yeah, and Hoy's... I feel like he's going to come away from this match, assuming he does lose the match, feeling a little bit ropey. It's the first game of the day. He's got to remember he's 4-0, or will be 4-1 if he loses the match. Because you can just see the first signs of tilt on set here. It's one match. 7-1 gets top 8. 6-2 with this start gives you a chance. You know, just going on that stage could destroy you. But he's done nothing obviously wrong. He just hasn't drawn removal in his games, and Hypno's hit him really quick and really hard. And this one is by no means over yet. Looking at all this removal, it is getting a bit dodgy already, though.
Wow, this was a very interesting final hit here for Hypno, because I agree, if you're on the aggressive, you want to push your advantage generally, But 16 health was the perfect amount of health to put NikolajHoej out on turn 4.
He does have a quality in hand, though, so that's a decision he made.
He does. Does he really want to go for it there? What happens if it's Hooked Reaver, he equalities, attacks him with the Hydrologist, 7 damage to face.
Plays a Swampoo's or...
I guess
he's all right,
it's pretty good.
And also, this is really good against the cards in hand, because taking 3 damage and clearing the board as your whole turn. Actually, in this position, do you really like that? Do you want to go down to 9 just to clear a board?
It doesn't feel amazing.
Like Hellfire now, and then you get hit for another 4 with a weapon, probably, because Valanier's in hand. And they make another board, and there's equality in hand to get through. Oh, I think this just wins for Hypno a lot of the time here.
It's looking that way. The early board clear just isn't there for Hoej, because Hypno's deck is just playing so aggressive. This hasn't even been a particularly good group of minions. This isn't like the old days with Knife Juggler and Dire Wolves and all that stuff. This is just basically evenly statted minions. It's a 2-2 for 2, and the Ooze that's been smacking him turn after turn to put Hoej in a position where he kind of just has to Hellfire or he's dead.
And I've got to admit, this is a very refreshing change to see. We've seen quite a similar lineup from a lot of players. I mean, Saiyan brought a lot of aggro, but a lot of this sort of lineup. And to see somebody just smashing through like this with even Paladin. Don't forget, it's Singapore next week. If even Paladin does incredibly well at this tournament, what happens? It blows the meta apart.
Who knows? It definitely looks like it still has a spot, because let's be honest, Paladin is not in the best spot at the moment. People are not happy with Odd Paladin. They feel like it's not aggressive enough against the Quest Rogues. It's only really good against some of the aggro decks, I find, because it loses to Druid a lot of the time as well. And the Odd Warriors. There's just a lot of bad matchups for the Odd Paladin.
And there's also the Priest deck as well, Asmo's Priest deck, which is also another deck that does the same sort of thing. If you don't want to bring this, you've got that choice as another sort of Quest Rogue backup, because your Quest Rogue gets banned. Everybody's banning Quest Rogue in almost all of the meta now, unless you're Saiyan and you just beat them down hard with your Odd Rogue all the time.
So now NikolajHoej in a similar spot once again. Does he just Hellfire to clear this board, which we can see will lose him the game? Or does he try and develop something? What could he develop? Coin Mossy Horror, he just loses. I think there's nothing for him here.
He's been in this situation every single game, it feels like. That he's just... But this game, I was saying about the Black Knight making you look like a genius or an idiot one way or the other. One game of Hearthstone, it's impossible to tell. And I said what a genius move it looks. He's not going to get to play it
now. Yeah, maybe that is just a misread of this meta, and this is of this matchup. Sorry, and this is one of Hypno's biggest advantages. Hoej keeping the Black Knight, assuming it would go into the late game,
and it seemed fine.
It didn't. It seemed fine, but it didn't even get close, because Hypno, after a 3-0 sweep with his signature even Paladin, brings NikolajHoej down to 4-1 and goes up to 5-0 in the Swiss himself. What a performance!
That is absolutely insane, and it is great to see it too.